Your Holiness, Dachitun,
Basim, thank you.
it's an honor and a privilege to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me. And I have followed your podcast from time to time, so it's my joy to be with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. Hopefully the weather and the atmosphere in London hasn't been too bad compared to other places.
No, actually, today it was fine. We had a bit of sun outside of London, so it was nice.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking we get straight into it.
Sure.
So we always have a segment in the podcast called the quick fire round. So
Yes.
these are just some quick fire questions that hopefully you can just shoot answers and, you know, in terms of the ones that first come to mind.
Okay.
The first one is, who is your favorite apostle?
My favorite apostle is Saint Thomas,
Okay.
because he's one of the founders of the Church of the East.
It's a solid answer.
A bit
to
of
be
a
fair.
bias there, but
No, it's a good bias. And the next one would be, who is your favorite Assyrian Church of the East figure?
modern or past?
Either or.
Well, I would say Patriarch Timothy I in the 8th, 9th century,
Okay. Any particular reason why?
because of the missionary expansion during his period as Patriarch.
Okay.
So the church spread out all through basically the known parts of Asia, Central and the Far East as well. So.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
The next question would be your favorite movie.
My favorite movie, well, I don't have much time to watch movies, but I would say The Passion of the Christ.
No, it's a beautiful film. I think we had a screening a few years ago.
We did.
Actually, we rented out a whole cinema and we
Yeah.
managed to fit it out for that
Okay.
experience. So
And
Yeah.
I believe The Resurrection is coming out sometime
Yes,
soon.
very soon.
I think so. I feel like that was a small marketing sort of moment there. But I think it's coming out very soon. Or is it out now?
No, it's coming out very soon. Yes.
Okay.
It should be something to wait for.
Yeah, definitely. Your next question would be your favorite church hymn, if you could only pick one.
My favorite church hymn would have to be Brechanana, which is, of course, written by Marbawi the Great at the beginning of the 7th century.
And the final question would be your favorite holiday destination.
Well, just like movies, I don't get to holiday that much, but I would say traveling in the Middle East is quite enjoyable.
Do you have any particular places within the Middle East that you prefer visiting or like to visit?
I would say two places in particular. So the villages in the Kurdistan region. So let's say in between Diana on the side of Arbil and the villages of Duhok and Urmi.
Oh,
as well,
Urmi.
the villages of Urmi. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Your Holiness.
of course.
As if we couldn't tell from your accent, we know you're from the US from your accent, but can you just tell us a little bit more about where you grew up?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Chicago, and going through my initial education there, of course, and also my training in the church under various priests, some of which who were of the older generation at the time and have since passed. And I was ordained a deacon and a priest in Chicago. I was also made core bishop in Chicago. And so that's pretty much where the majority of my, you could say, the beginnings of my church life and career.
Whereabouts in Chicago? Was it the Assyrian capital of Skokie? Or might have
No,
been,
it was in the city itself.
Okay.
You know,
Nice.
in, let's say the Rogers Park area, if you know Chicago. But mainly as a deacon, especially, and serving later on, I was attached to Margivargis Cathedral, so, which is where I received the orders that I mentioned.
In terms of your journey within priesthood, when did you feel that call or that particular calling? You know, at what point in your life?
Right. Well, I would say from a very young age. I'm not able to pinpoint it exactly in terms of at what age, but I would say in my younger teens. So I was tutored in the Shanatiq and the Old Language, beginning when I was about 12 or 13. And so gradually that, of course, impressed upon me a great love for the church and for serving the church. And so I would say roughly that would be, the time period. So there was no epiphany moment, if you will, but it was something that grew with me from childhood. And of course, I grew up in the Sunday school system of the church at the time. And then after Sunday school, I entered the youth association, the Shotaput Alaim Alaimante. I served in the choir at Margi Vergis for 2 years, and then I was made a deacon after that. So it began through various stages of my life, but I would say from elementary school years.
Is there a key figure in your life that has kept you in the Assyrian Church of the East?
Well, I would say probably one who has had an impact on my vocation in the church would be Archdeacon Shlomo Chazkiel, who's now, he's retired since, of course, but he lives in Chicago. So he tutored me from when I was still a young teen, and I studied with him for the diaconate, and also through priestly formation and what led to my priesthood ordination. So definitely he has been a great influence on my church life, if you will. Also the late Patriarch, my predecessor, Mardancha, when growing up in Chicago, which is where he lived, so we would often see him, whether in the setting of Sunday school or in the youth association especially, he would visit often. I remember he used to practice with us, actually, at the time that I was in choir. So he would come often and make sure that we were singing properly and reading properly. And so all of those sort of put together, if you will, they had a great influence on my vocation in the church.
But when you do get the chance to relax, what sort of things do you like to do?
Well, I enjoy reading. I enjoy researching, and research ending up in publications. That's sort of, if you will, a hobby for me. So, not that I have the time now as I used to. I was a bit more able to do so when I was a bishop, but and a student, of course, as a priest. But now, it's sort of difficult to be able to do that. I'm able to read as often as I'd like to, but the research part is something that I really have to make time and sort of crunch things, but it's sort of a mental outlet for me, if you will.
And in terms, you're saying that you like to read, or when you get the chance to, is there anything interesting that you're reading at the moment, or any sort of recommendations to some books that you've read that might be of use to others that are watching?
Well, quite a bit on the history of the church, patrology, or the patristics, the fathers of the church. So I like to do a variant type of reading. It's not just simply in one area, but
Your Holiness, the reason for your stay here in London is because we consecrated the Matmariam Cathedral here in London, the new Matmariam Cathedral in London. And we are very privileged to have you consecrate our new cathedral.
It was my joy.
We want to understand from you what were your thoughts over the weekend's processions, from arriving on the Friday up until the banquet dinner on the Sunday, and everything in between, from the consecration to the inauguration. I want your key highlights from over the weekend.
Well, first and foremost, let me say my sincere congratulations and Hava Baricha. To your bishop, His Grace Marurahim, to the parish priest, to the deacons, and all of you, the faithful. I often used to come to London. Well, this is my second official visit as Patriarch, of course, but I used to accompany the late Patriarch Mardancha when I was a bishop. And oftentimes when we were traveling either through other parts of Europe or to the Middle East, coming back, so I would accompany him, and he would stop in London, and he would enjoy doing that and visiting with the community. At the time, the late Archdeacon Yonan was still, of course, present, and he was still living, and I could see that he enjoyed it very much because, of course, Mardancha was elected and consecrated as Patriarch in London. So, and he was the one who, as I mentioned in my talk on Sunday, who officially began the parish here. And so it had always had a special place in his heart. I mean, even if he was in Chicago for many years, but there was a different feeling in London. So he used to love to make a stop there whenever he was traveling. I would accompany him for a number of times on such trips. And so all of that sort of came back in my own mind from the old St. Mary's, and how when we used to visit sometimes it would be rainy, as it often is in London, and people would be stuck outside because of course the crowd was quite numerous to visit the Patriarch and to receive Holy Communion from him. So I would think to myself, now when are these people going to get a bigger church so that they don't have to stay outside under the rain?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, you have a bigger church now. So it's a great, great joy. And of course, there's a lot of expectation for the growth of our community here. And I'm sure that will happen first and foremost by the blessing of God and with the diligence of your bishop and the priests and everyone involved, really. Of course, it's not just the clergy. The faithful also have an important role to play. So, but it was a very moving experience. I had put all of my past visits together with the present. Unfortunately, some people are not with us today who would have really enjoyed to have seen this day, but nonetheless, the community as a whole, there's always a collective experience, not just individually. So I'm very, very pleased and very happy that this move was made.
Just a question to add, if you don't mind. It seems like it was quite a nostalgic moment for you to be able to come back. Is there any particular memories or things that you liked about the church when we were in the previous St. Mary's? Anything that stood out to you?
For the old St. Mary's? Well, just the fact that it was small and cozy.
Yeah, very cozy.
I don't know about the squeaky wood floor. It probably still squeaks.
I think it's still squeaks, to be honest.
But it was just the coziness of the church. It was a very small church that was, I think, pushed everyone together, sort of, sitting tight and, as we say, tiba khubane. So, so that was one of the things. And the small kainke, it was reminiscent of many of our village churches, which if you visited Atra, you've seen many churches in the villages are quite small. But that, I think, is a part of their identity, and really it impresses a sense of holiness on someone who comes in to pray and to see God there. So, but it had its own flavor. I'm sure the new church now will develop its own character, if you will.
Of course.
Especially once the heating starts to work.
We'll get that running as soon as possible.
I should hope so
for
by my next visit. Yes.
Absolutely. Building on your response to a new cathedral and your memories from there, in terms of a bigger space and acquiring a new cathedral to fill the bigger space that we do have within our community, what are the advantages for our parishioners and the wider church in acquiring a new cathedral?
Here in London?
Here in London.
Well, maybe less people will be complaining about parking now.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Although we'll see about that.
Some people will
They're still complaining,
about that. So. But the hall, which I haven't seen yet, actually, I should make it a point to see the new hall before I leave. But I think that will help, because I remember whenever there was a breakfast or an event, you had to go upstairs for the hall in the old St. Mary's, and you couldn't get more than 70 or 80 people up there. And then the children had their classes there. And then the kitchen was there as well. So it was very tight up there.
Cozy.
Yeah.
Intimate.
No, the hall was tight. The church was cozy.
The church is cozy.
But it served its purpose. But now I think you have much more space. There were some other ideas that Maro Rahman and I were speaking about this morning at breakfast. I won't share them now because he'll probably surprise you with them. So, mum's the word. I won't say anything.
Fair enough.
But those are things that now can be done on the grounds of the new church, which you have plenty of space.
I think it's exciting as well, seeing as our youth group is expanding. So it's nice to have a larger space and more surface area for us to kind of be together and, to have fellowship and introduce new things to, engage the youth into the church. And
that's very important. The hall and the classrooms that will be partitioned, and the offices So those are very important to carry out the ministry of the church.
Definitely.
And the youth, yes, I had the joy of meeting with the youth 2.5 years ago on my last visit, and I'll be meeting with them on this visit as well. I'm assuming you both will be
We
there.
very much look forward to
Yes.
Wednesday evening. Do you envisage an impact for the wider impact on the diocese with acquiring this new cathedral?
Well, yes, in any diocese, the cathedral is the main church, if you will, of the diocese. And by its etymology, the word cathedral means the church where the seat of the diocesan bishop is to be found. So that's important to have a cathedral that is exemplary for other parish churches, not simply in its size, but in its organization, in the ministries that are carried out there. So definitely, I'm sure it will be exemplary for all of the other various parishes in the diocese. Yeah.
So going back to our discussions about Atra, very recently, I think it might have been 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years
2
ago.
years
youth
ago.
conference.
August of 2023.
Yes.
Exactly. We did our first sort of international youth conference in Atra.
Yes.
And I guess what I wanted to understand was explaining, I guess, the meaning and the reasoning behind these conferences and what they mean for our youth in the future.
Well, we had taken a decision at the Synod back in 2019 to hold our very first international youth conference. So almost all of the dioceses have their own local diocesan annual youth conference. We do in North America and in the U.S. Now Canada is a part of that. In Australia, the Diocese of Europe here. So we thought of putting something together that would bring youth from across the globe together from our church. In 2019, of course, we had taken the decision. 2020 was the beginning of COVID. So we had to put that on hold. And in August of 2023, we were able to realize that dream. And so we have, of course, given that mission over to Mar Orahim, since he is the bishop responsible for the youth globally, for the youth programs globally. And so 2026 will be the next one because we decided to have it every 3 years. There were some of the prelates who wanted to have it every 2 years, but then it would be difficult for those who already have their own locally, annually. So every 3 years is what we're going with now. We'll see how that works. But the next one, of course, will be sometime in 2026. They haven't actually pinpointed the month because August, as you can imagine, is a very warm month in Atra, in Iraq. So we're trying to work around that. But not too many people complained last time, but we still want it to be a bit more pleasant, if you will, in terms of the climate. So we'll see what month. But definitely 26 is when we'll have the next one. I don't know if you were there for 23.
I wasn't
We
able
weren't
to,
there for the first
unfortunately.
one, no.
But
So we
be
hope
there.
you can make
We
it.
will be
We
there
will
for the next
100% be there.
Okay, well that's good. And bring the other youth with you as well.
We will
Of
try.
course.
We'll have a busload of UK.
UK Assyrians.
So this time around we'll most likely start in Duhok, and then of course the youth will have the opportunity to visit Arbil, the villages, some ancient churches and monasteries. So it'll be a very nice program. I'm sure everyone will enjoy it. It's that connection that we want to make with our youth and our homeland. So we took sort of a survey last time, and I believe about 85 to 90% of the youth who attended in 2023 had come for the first time.
Wow.
And so we had 300 youth, and the vast majority of them were coming to the Atra for the very first time. And that was encouraging, and they enjoyed it thoroughly, so we hope that they'll come back again.
Yeah.
And we want some newbies such as yourself to come.
We were in Assyria a few months before the youth conference, but we do plan.
Many come for Khabnisan and for other activities. But because this is especially tailored for the youth internationally, it's the program, the speakers, the presentations are, of course, very, very unique. So,
Very much.
So we hope to
forward.
see you in 26.
100%.
Yeah.
And from a personal note, how important is it for you to have youth in the diaspora who've never been back to their roots and back to Assyria, and how important is it to you for that to happen and for that to be put in motion?
Well, it's very important, and hence that's why we had the decision at the level of the Synod to have an international youth conference. Because many of our youth are growing up in various countries of the diaspora, and they really don't have a connection to the homeland, to the villages of their parents and grandparents. They might have heard stories, I'm sure, maybe seen old photos, but they've never actually been there. And so that's a different experience once you're there and you touch and see and you feel your grandfather's village. Some of them even have their old homes there as well. So their parents' home, their grandparents' home. So it's a different experience, and it's very important to visualize and realize the stories that they've heard and what we tell them, for example. It's different when you're actually there on the ground. So that's the idea. That connection, I think, is very important. And you'll find many of them often come back, and that connection is already made. So many times, a lot of our youngsters, especially when they're on holidays off from school, they like to go to various European countries, and okay, well, that's fine. But or families take a vacation together. Well, why don't you come to Atra during your vacation time and enjoy your time there?
I feel
And it's relatively safe and easy to travel now, so there really is no pretext not to come.
I think also for me personally, in terms of how I found my experience in Atra, and I think Fadi would probably say the same, it was a complete 360, not only within the church, but realizing, how loving, how welcoming, and how amazing our community is. And it only inspires you to come back and work within your diaspora communities. And it kind of leads me on to the next question. As the Church of the East, or the Assyrian Church of the East, what are we doing to sort of inspire and bring our diaspora Assyrian communities closer to their heritage and their community and culture?
Well, obviously the church and the diaspora has different challenges and focuses, if you will, as opposed to those that are in the Middle East. And the diaspora, your main challenge, or the church's main challenge, is to preserve that identity for the younger generations. And the identity, of course, has many parts to it. It has the history, it has the language, it has the religious aspect, the attachment to the church, and other components. So the church on various levels in our dioceses and parishes across the Western world are teaching the Assyrian language and Yulpanam Shikhaya, or catechism, if you will. In many parts of the Western world, we have schools, official schools that are recognized. There are many language schools attached to the local parish. And so that teaching element in one form or another is present in almost all of our communities in the Western world. So that's very important, because it is through teaching that we can immerse our youngsters, not just the youth, but even the younger children, into the love and knowledge of our faith, of our history as a nation, as the Assyrian people, knowledge and love for our language, etc. So that's our values as Assyrians, things that our parents and grandparents taught us that nowadays, oftentimes, unfortunately, you'll find are being lost. So the church has really taken upon itself that whole program. Unfortunately, and I say this not as a criticism, but more so with pain, a lot of our secular Assyrian organizations have really not stepped up to the plate in that aspect. So the church by default is really engaged in that, apart from our religious mission. And we do that in order to preserve our Assyrian nation outside of the homeland. And we will continue to do that in order to preserve our younger generations, future generations, in our Assyrian nation.
Over history, the Assyrian Church of the East has been a leader of our nation up until
Indeed.
modern times.
Indeed.
You touched upon language being very important to maintain, and in the diaspora it can become very difficult, especially when we're in schools and universities, learning our trade or our vocations in the language of the diaspora. In practical terms, what would you say to people watching, or to even parents watching, to instill our language or to maintain our mother tongue?
The most important thing is for the mothers to speak with their children in Assyrian at home. So we have a lot of mothers in the English-speaking world who, for one reason or another, like to show that they've learned English well, and they begin to speak English with their children. And I mean children that are 2, 3, 4 years old. I've seen this myself, and I've experienced it. So that is the greatest disservice that an Assyrian mother can do. So that child going to school, particularly if it's a public school system, they will learn English or the language of the country by default. So that's not an argument. But they need to speak with their children in our own mother tongue, because that most likely they will not learn at school. And so the mothers have to be very conscious of this fact, and they need to really make the effort. So let your children learn English at school. You speak with them in the Assyrian language at home and in other settings where we're amongst our own people.
I feel like
I've mentioned this in many talks oftentimes. And the problem is that they speak English incorrectly. So you don't want your child to learn English incorrectly. Let school teach them. You teach them Assyrian.
I feel like learning our language is probably, I wouldn't say simple, but one of the quickest and one of the easiest wins in order to kind of maintain our heritage and culture. And I definitely agree that it all starts from home.
Yes.
It's something that my parents and Fadi's parents encouraged heavily when we were younger. So I'm very happy to be able to speak, Surid from home. And I guess for younger generations, it's quite difficult now. I feel like it's almost less amounts of our culture, language, and ethnicity are being passed down to generations. So I think now is the time to consciously make even more of an effort. And it's great that the church is able to teach language, to teach the hymns, and to teach the liturgy to the youth.
No, definitely. I think, again, yes, the effort needs to be made. And so laziness will not get us anywhere.
100%.
And it can be very detrimental to our future. And so speaking at home, the modern Assyrian, the vernacular Assyrian language, and within the church setting for our youngsters, our choir members, our deacons and clergy, definitely, to be knowledgeable enough of the old language, what we call the Shanatik or Lishana Aramaya, in order to be able to serve the liturgies and to understand them well enough. So that's also very important, because that is the language of our Lord Jesus Christ, and it is the language that the church has used 2,000 years plus now, and so that is also a part of our ecclesiastical identity, and we need to preserve that as well.
100%. And to almost go back to sort of the organization space, how can the community foster stronger connections between the church and the cultural organizations that currently exist within our community, to create a bit more of a sense of unity across both groups?
Is this locally or just across the board?
I'd say maybe across the board.
I think across the board,
right?
yeah.
Well, I've mentioned oftentimes that the church is not in competition with any Assyrian political, social organization, club, foundation, etc. Because the mission of the church, of course, I think is rather obvious to any Assyrian who is knowledgeable about who he or she is as an Assyrian. So there's no dispute there in that respect. And the church has always tried to have an amicable relationship with all of our Assyrian organizations, the more secular organizations, let's say. Unfortunately, in certain places and at certain times, the opposite has not been true. and there have been issues. But as we speak today, presently, the church has no battle or competition with any Assyrian organization. To the contrary, we always, at least for example, when I'm in Iraq and Arbil, and oftentimes I meet with our political activists and social activists who are Assyrians in the country and in other countries as well. And I encourage them to be faithful, first and foremost, to the goal of their association, or to the goal of just being a good activist for our people. And the more simple they keep it, I think it will be cleaner, if you will. And so we've always supported them with our prayers, by other means as well that are necessary. And so, yes, the church, again, is not in competition with any organization, any secular Assyrian organization. We would like to accompany them as well in their work, and as much as it doesn't contradict the mission of the church. But, and as long as they are working without any other interests for the good of our people, we will always support them and work with them.
Having grown up in the West and making the move to Assyria, Erbil, where your seat is, the cultural, I'm sure there's many cultural differences. Has it been a difficult challenge to navigate those cultural differences, especially in the Assyrian space, and navigating the situations with the cultural organizations, or even the churches within, the different churches within the region?
So definitely there was a learning curve, of course. I'd say that I probably passed that curve about the first year and a half of my patriarchate. So I'm comfortable with it now after 3 and almost a half years. But yes, it was a learning experience, of course, with respect to dealing with other churches there, social, political organizations, our neighbors, non-Assyrians. So there's quite a bit of subtleties that you have to be aware of when dealing with each and every group that is not yourself. So I've learned the majority of those, the more important ones, the ones that obviously that help to foster respect, because that's a part of my ministry as well. I'm not there to step on anyone's toes, but by the same token, my interests are the interests of the church as a whole and the church locally. Obviously, because our church in Iraq as a whole, in Arbil, is not necessarily the most numerous, but our history there, of course, is foundational. It's a history that stems back to the beginnings of the church and during the apostolic age. So that is our mission, that is our selling point, if you will, is that we have always been there from the beginning, whether as Assyrians or as faithful of the Church of the East. And so I always try to focus on that and not be involved, even though oftentimes it can be difficult, in peripheral matters, discussions, arguments, whether of a religious or political nature. But with ecumenically, of course, I would say that we're on very, very good terms with our churches there. Of course, different names are used for the local churches, even when we speak the same language. But we treat each other with respect and as brothers, and we try to, as they say, not coerce, but try to also offer other perspectives in terms of who we are. And there's always a common element, whether it's the Assyrian Church of the East, the Chaldean Catholic Church, Syrian Catholic, the Syrian Orthodox, etc. There's always a common element that's historical that we can sort of all together touch and say, yes, this belongs to me. And then the other church will say, oh, well, I have that as well, and maybe in a different form. But there's always common points. So, for example, last year, for the week of September 13th, the Feast of the Holy Cross, in Ankawa, we had a weeks-long festival of the Holy Cross, and each day one of the churches hosted the festival, and it was very elaborate and in some ways competitive. And so that was very, very well received by everyone, where you had thousands of people literally each day at the different church affiliation participating. And of course the bishops that were there, I was there as well each day. So that was very, very well received. And that's also very important because of the political climate in the Middle East at large. It is very important for the Christian churches to be ecumenically close together and to treat each other with respect and as brothers.
How important is it for you and for the church for the patriarchal seat to be back home in Assyrian lands?
Well, officially that decision was taken by the synod when my immediate predecessor, His Holiness Margi was elected in 2015. It was also the wish of the late Mardan Khan, and the discussions already began in 1970 when the late Malishe Shuman visited Iraq in 1970 and 71. And so that offer at that time was given by the Iraqi government. But the political climate wasn't conducive to that move. And so it finally was realized in 2015 with the election and consecration of Margi III. And so, of course, as his successor, we've continued that same line, because the Church believes that we have to, at the highest level of the Church's governance, at the level of the Patriarchate, we have to have that connection physically on the ground, if you will, in the Atra. As you know, until 2015, the Patriarchate was outside of Iraq for almost 83 years. Since 1933, when Malishe Shuman was exiled, and then his successor, Mardan Khan IV, of course, for political reasons, it wasn't that easy to bring the patriarchal seat back to Iraq. So for 83 years, that's a long time to be outside of the homeland. And by the end of those 83 years, of course, many, many political changes, demographic changes had taken place among our own people. And so, but still it is the Church's message, locally and internationally, that our roots are here. So that's very important. I realize that the majority of our faithful, I would say about 90 to 95%, are in the diaspora. And thanks be to God, I'm still able to very easily travel and visit all of our faithful. But it's still important to have the seat of the Patriarchate, the headquarters of the Church, if you will, present there in Atra.
Amazing. Yeah. And as you've mentioned, the late Mardan Khan IV of blessed memory, he left a lasting legacy of particular significance, how he instilled love and passion not only for our church, but also for the Assyrian nation. Yeah. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it's true, and I realize this as the days go by, that at the end of a patriarch's patriarchate, there's always a summation or a summary statement, if you will, of who he was as a patriarch. And yes, Mardan Khan very much instilled a love for our nation and the Church, of course, but the nation as well among our faithful. And I think he continued in the line of the late Malishe Shuman, because he also had really, really worked for our nation during very difficult times. Since 1920, when he was elected at the young age of 11 and a half years old, and the formation of the new state of Iraq, and then the Semena massacre in 1933, and his exile, and his coming to the United States, and his passing in 1975, and then Mardan Khan came and picked up all of that, and brought it to a new light and a new context. Our people began to leave the Middle East, and he was able to instill the love of our nation. I think one thing that is very close to my own heart and my ministry is working with the youth. And so I would like to be remembered as a patriarch for and by and with the youth. If nothing else, I myself am a product of the Youth Association of the Church when I was a young deacon in Chicago. And I served in various youth committees, and so I have seen in the last, I would say, 10 years or so, a growth spurt of the youth ministry of our church worldwide, and the realization of the importance. Now, obviously, we can't forget the children as well, because at every stage and level of life, the church has to cater to the needs of her faithful. But particularly the youth, because oftentimes the youth are very energetic. You are very energetic. Let me point my fingers at you now. You have many ideas that as we get older sort of don't become computated in our mind. So you can help us be updated, if you will. And the other thing is to remember that the youth are not merely the future of the church, and I mention this often, but they are, in fact, the present of the church. So we don't need to wait for the youth to grow up and have them serve in the church in various capacities. No. They have the ability to do that now, with our guidance, of course. But I think that the pulse of the church, the heartbeat, that energy in the church today is the youth. So I would like to be remembered as the patriarch of the youth.
Amazing.
Incredible.
But I'm seeing a lot of good fruit in many parts of the church globally, and which is much different when I was in the youth group. So you should be thankful for that.
Definitely.
We are very appreciative of your guidance.
I think what's incredible as well is, as you said, Your Holiness, you're providing opportunities for the youth now to contribute ideas and actually, continue to pave the way and build the future of our church. And I think traditionally as Assyrians, there's a sense of, I don't know what the word would be, but almost a bit patronizing, or not allowing younger members of the community to make an effort and to make an impact, whether it's through church or organizations. So it's great to hear that you're very open and willing to allow us to kind of lead the way and contribute ideas and efforts to the
definitely.
church.
Times have changed, if you will, in that respect. So as I mentioned, when I was growing up, yes, there was a lot of patronizing. I'm not critiquing my own elders at the time. That was the mentality. That was the way of thinking. There was a certain structure and order, and you just had to follow it. But nowadays, because there are different ways of understanding and seeing the world, there are different contexts for our own people in terms of church life and social life. And so there is the necessity that I think we really must not underestimate of having the youth be active today in the church.
Definitely.
And so your own new church here in London is not simply to serve the older generation, but that church needs to be filled 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. And so in order to do that, you have to begin working on the children and on the youth today.
Of course.
And so it's simple. It's not very complicated.
Hopefully, Maraham will enable us and allow us for some of our outrageous ideas and exciting stuff to plan ahead.
He's very gracious and accommodates a lot of our ideas.
Definitely.
I'm sure he will. As long as it doesn't go against canon law, he'll probably allow it.
So far, so good.
So far, so good, yeah.
But you have an advantage indeed, yes, because your bishop is also one who grew up in the Youth Association of the Church. He's youthful and young himself in terms of his age. And so that connection is there between him and your generation and those a bit younger than yourselves.
And I guess to go on to the point of the youth, what guidance would you offer young Christians on staying connected to their faith, especially in the world that we're currently living? It's ever changing and quite a lot going on. So if you have any advice to any young Christians?
Well, definitely. Very simple. Stay close to Christ. Navigating in today's world is indeed very difficult. A lot of crazy things are going on in the world. So it's easy to get lost. in ideologies, in whether they be political, social, religious, etc. So, but when one is anchored in his faith or her faith in Christ, then you can safely navigate through those dangerous waters. So it is very, very important for the youth to be close to God in their lives. Of course, the church helps foster that. That is the role of the Youth Association of the church. It doesn't, believe it or not, begin in church. It begins in the home. So whether it's the church or our Assyrian nation, the seed for that is planted in the Assyrian Christian home. Parents, the father and mother, and the children. That family unit is where our church and our nation begins. And so, of course, that's another very important point. We need to foster the values of the family, the values of marriage and family life today. And because that has a direct influence and impact on the youth, on children growing up, on how our youth will face the world today and tomorrow, and the challenges that they have on a daily basis. So the church can help, but again, it all begins in the home. And so I'd like to leave those words with our beloved youth. But in any circumstance, remaining close to Christ, being united to Christ, is the way to live.
Your Holiness, it is an honor and privilege to be sitting with the
thank you for
Patriarch
having me.
of the Assyrian Church of the
Thank
East.
you. It was my joy.
In closing, would you lead us in a prayer?
Yes. And I'll pray it in Assyrian.
Absolutely.
Of course.
بشم آوا ولا روح القدس الأمين ببركتوخ مارن وعلى هم بيشي برخيري جواتوخ وخدمياتوخ بخلطة خمس صويانوخ بيشي نطيرة سغدانوخ شينا يا ماري دايم على هوتوخ وشلام مقويانة معروتوخ هاكم جو طايبو جو إيتوخ كل يومانة ألما مارت كل آوا وورا روح القدس الأمين.
Amen.
God bless you both.
Barak.
God bless you. Thank you for your time, Your Holiness.
So much, Your Holiness.